What would it be like to fly at a flight school that has a beautiful fleet of Diamond aircraft, all these stick-controlled aircraft that are very modern, very interesting, and sounds like they're very fun to fly? Let's find out. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Late Departure. I'm Adam, and today we're continuing on my journey to find the right flight school for me. We've been talking with all kinds of flight students from all over the province, and I'm really happy to continue to learn about all these different flight schools. And today I finally learned about one of the schools I've been really curious about, which is Sealand Air. And Sealand Air has a whole fleet of Diamond aircraft, and Diamonds are really interesting. They're very modern looking, they're composite, they're low wing, they're controlled by a stick. At 6'1" and 220 pounds, I'm not sure if I could fit in one. I'd love to try sometime. It might be a little bit cramped, but it definitely sounds really cool. And they are a little bit more expensive to rent. If you look at Sealand Air compared with some of the other places, I think it's about $10, $20 more to rent a Diamond than it is to rent a Cessna 172 or something like that. But again, they are very modern and apparently they're very fun to fly. At the same time, I have heard from some people that the Diamonds, because they have the glass canopy top and not very much ventilation, that in the summertime, they're an absolute sauna. So if you get hot really easily, might not be the best aircraft for you, but still sounds really cool and really fun to fly. So I talked with some students from Sealand Air, and Sealand Air, it is one of the smaller schools at Boundary Bay, and they do have a smaller fleet than a lot of the other larger schools there. But the students that I talked with seem to have a pretty good experience there. So let's jump right into it. So one of the students I talked with had gone to Pacific Flying Club, Pro IFR, almost all of the big name flying schools at Boundary Bay. And the students said that they weren't really impressed. They had like the large registration fees at Pro IFR. At BCIT, a student was getting bumped because of the BCIT students. So this is what I was talking about before. You really got to keep in mind when people attended these schools. So this student is currently attending Sealand Air, but before, a matter of about a year or two ago, the student was attending Pro IFR and Pacific Flying Club. So again, you got to talk with people who are studying at these places now to find out how they are. Because of course, Pacific Flying Club is better than it was a year ago. And by the sounds of it, Pro IFR is worse than it was a year ago. So definitely, you got to keep up on this. So in terms of the airplane instructor availability, not many planes available. It sounded a lot to me kind of like what I heard about from students from Pacific Rim. It's a smaller school, not that many aircraft, and you have to book at least a month ahead. So basically, at 30 days in advance, at 12 o'clock midnight, you can book 30 days in advance. And so you have to, some people stay up until 12 a.m. trying to book flights. These students said that they had those kinds of issues. Again, this seems pretty common, and it's not as bad as it could be. Some of the schools might not even be able to get you a flight 30 days in advance. Some of them might be limiting you to 2 or 3 times a week or even less, right? But again, I'd say it's a little bit busier than average, but again, just a little bit more than average, something that you need to consider. However, even with the lower availability of airplanes, the students said that it's a small school, everybody knows each other, I guess because it's a small school, but everyone's sort of like a family there. And the students said that the instructors were super experienced, that the CFI was extremely experienced, had a bunch of experience in commercial airline operations. And a lot of the students, funnily enough, were from places like Pacific Flying Club, who didn't like what was happening at Pacific Flying Club, whether it was the bookings or getting bumped for flights or something like that. So this is very telling. If you see a school and the school has a bunch of students from other schools, you might want to take a look at those other schools and think, maybe that school isn't as good as I think it might be. So just something to keep in mind. That being said, they don't have a lot of instructors. So if you have an instructor that you don't really like, you might be able to change, but it's going to be a bit more difficult to change. And that is a really big consideration because as far as almost everyone has told me, your relationship with your flight instructor is the most important thing. If you have a great relationship, you're gonna have a really good time. If you have a bad relationship, you could have a very terrible time that could even maybe influence you to stop flying altogether. So really something you want to keep in mind. In terms of forcing you to buy supplemental materials or ratings, the students said no, they don't do anything like that. They're very laid back. They do have sets of things like most schools do that you can buy, but they are by no means adamant that you must buy all the stuff there, or that they don't chase you down to complete ratings or anything like that. So again, that's a good integrity move. I like schools that are like that. In terms of pay as you go or pay up front, they're a pay as you go place. So if you want, the student said you can keep a card on file, but otherwise it's fine. You just pay as you go, as you fly. So pretty standard there. So in terms of paying extra for more ground time, this is one of those situations I talked about in the last video in Glacier Air, where the student actually felt bad because they rarely charged for ground time. And so the student felt that the instructors were genuinely trying to help and not just make money or build hours or something like that. And they're also very transparent about their fuel surcharge. So I know that PFC, Pacific Flying Club, I had to hear about it from people that the fuel surcharge was so high, but Sealand Air were very transparent. They say right up front on the website how much their fuel surcharge is, and I believe it's around $10. In terms of promising flight jobs, they don't do anything like that. These students said that the CFI is very stringent in hiring new flight instructors, so you can feel confident that the flight instructors are going to be pretty qualified because the CFI is very strict in that. So if you applied specifically and maybe you did really well in your training, possibly they might offer you something, but for the most part, no. Like you would have to apply for the job if it became available. They're not promising these jobs to get people in the door. In terms of maintenance, these students are really impressed by how transparent the maintenance was. The journey logs were easily accessible. Maintenance was done by an authorized diamond repair center. So there's one actually right next to Sealand Air. So everything in regards to maintenance is posted publicly. And this is something that made these students feel really good. One of the students said, "It's so transparent, it made me feel really good about my flying there. It made me feel safe because the journey logs were really detailed. You could see even the compression in the cylinders and just all kinds of stuff that just in all was just very transparent about maintenance." So that sounds like a pretty good thing. And I can't emphasize enough how important maintenance is. Like, you want to make sure that wherever you're going to go, they're doing good maintenance on the planes, because this is your life that's on the line, right? And I don't want to die, right? I want to stay alive. So this makes me feel really comfortable if I were to choose Sealand Air as my flight school. In terms of showing the show pony aircraft, well, all the aircraft are new diamonds. Well, maybe not so new now, but they're still newer than a lot of the Cessnas, probably at least by 20, 30 years. So there's nothing really for them to show off in that regard. So in terms of them helping you reach your goals, again, this is one of the most important things to me. And these students said that really the instructors go above and beyond to make sure that your needs are met. And they really try to work something out for you. So one of the students had a really strict schedule because of work, and they wanted to try to balance flying and work. And so Sealand Air was able to really help them map out a schedule, map out goals, and make sure they got there every step of the way. And I was very impressed by that. I think that's a very, very good thing for flight schools to do. So all in all, that's about it. And so it sounds on the whole that Sealand Air is pretty good. They are very transparent about a lot of things. They seem to have a lot of integrity. They're honest about the training, about the costs, about all those kinds of things. Honestly, I think the only thing for me, again, was just the diamond aircraft. As much as I'd like to fly it, and this is something for everyone out there, you know, the aircraft do have weight limits. So if you're over a certain weight, it might not be possible for you to fly in certain aircraft, or even if it is possible, it might not be comfortable. So for example, when I was young, I was a lot smaller than I am now. I don't know how, but I was a lot smaller. I was probably 50, 60 pounds lighter than I was, and I flew in 152s. I don't think I could fly in a Cessna 152 anymore with another full-sized person. So now I'm gonna be flying in 172s, it looks like. And same thing, diamonds, the DA-20s, they're pretty small. And also I sweat a lot. I get really hot in the summertime. So if I'm in a sauna and I'm flying, I'm probably gonna pass out. So for me, that would be my biggest influential factor for me deciding whether or not I would go to somewhere like Sealand Air. It's just my body size. And if you're in the same boat as me, then you might be there as well. Otherwise, if you have a smaller stature, a smaller body size, then the world is your oyster. You can really go wherever you want. But this is just something to keep in mind. All right, I hope you all enjoyed that. Thank you again for joining me on my late departure here. And I'm getting closer and closer to finding the right flight school for me. I think maybe over the next week or two, I'm gonna be able to really start to narrow down the schools I'm gonna go to. And at some point, I'm also gonna talk a little bit about my online ground school choices that I had and what I chose and why I chose what I did. So hopefully you can look forward to that. And as always, stay healthy, stay happy, stay safe, fly, have fun, and see you next time.